Hey there, it's your TTS Radio. We present some of the most entertaining stories from Reddit, and elsewhere to you. Make sure to subscribe and enjoy the show. What is the most Karen thing a Karen has even done to you, personally? This random lady that lived in my neighborhood said I couldn't bike in front of her house without wearing a helmet because she was afraid of getting sued by my parents if I were to fall off my bike in front of her house or something along those lines. I was like 8. Told her the street wasn't her property and rode away. Didn't really look back for a reaction. I was working at my job as a cashier at my local supermarket. We were swamped with people. I had at least 7 people waiting in my line. One of my good friends from high school was in my line and I talked to him as I was ringing up his stuff. After he left, I welcomed the next lady in line and asked the usual stuff. Did you find everything okay? How are you doing? Etc. Before I could get a word out, she asked to speak to my manager. Apparently I was rude to her for not including her in my conversation with my high school friend. She didn't even chime in or anything, and I never seen her in my life. Fucking Karen, man. Something similar happened with me, but I was the old school friend. The Karen started bitching at my buddy about not including her, etc., and started screaming about seeing a manager. This was like 11:30 p.m. and besides me there were maybe 10 people in the building including employees, so the manager begrudgingly walks out of the office and asks what the problem was. The Karen instantly screeches about deserving free products because she wasn't served properly, and I just fucking lost my shit laughing at her. This, as with any Karen, made her more angry, so she tried bitching at me. My response was, bitch, I ain't an employee, I can tell you're entitled ass to fuck off without worrying about someone firing me, to which she starts vibrating with anger and walks off without her paid for groceries, screeching about how she's calling the police for verbal abuse. I high-fived my buddy and just walked home. I have dealt with some fairly entitled people as a claims adjuster. I posted this a while back. I once had the misfortune of taking some high-end insured's claim. When our richer insureds hit someone or get hit, they typically get a personal adjuster who does everything. However, they sent it off to me, something about vacations. In any case, the best part about these claims is how easy they are. You basically say yes as long as it is not completely bonkers, and write checks later. So our insured hit this lady's Ferrari. The claimant, Mrs. Ferrari Lady, wants to take it to the Ferrari dealership. I said fine. She demanded a rental. I told her that was not a problem, take the Ferrari over there, we'll get you another Ferrari, not a fucking piece of shit Nissan Sentra like last time. I called the dealership and explained to them how to proceed. Make sure to get her into a rental, make it nice and easy, send me the bill, we'll get it handled. At this point I'm basically telling the dealership to proceed forward as they see fit, to shoot first and ask questions later. The last thing I want are problems with one of these claims, and we have the power and authority to do so. Our insureds paid out the ass for the extra service, even for their claimants. The guy on the phone tells me he'll make sure everything is good. I just gave this guy a golden ticket. He can hand her a $250 a day car rental, and we'll be writing the check, no questions asked. Start repairs ASAP, order the parts today, don't bug me, send the bill. He gets it. Life is supposed to be simple. I literally want him to email me the estimate, I send him the check and email him a screenshot. That's it. This claim should be fucking easy. I get a call 2 hours later. The woman is pissed. Maybe she got a dumb tech who didn't hear the news. Nope. Even I couldn't get that lucky. She's out of her mind, so I talked to a rep that is capable of conversing without screaming like a banshee at everything. He explains she has refused to take a rental. I ask why. She wants the same year and color and model. He tells me he just spent 30 minutes calling any dealer in the city, knowing full well I will pay the markup for having the dealership rent a car from a competitor. There are no rental Ferraris in the area that match that request, and none in the nearest 3 cities apparently. I ask our manager. My manager refuses to ship in another Ferrari. Damn it. She goes bonkers and nothing is accomplished. I can't even get a word in. They take the phone conversation into the dealership service manager's office. He asks her why she will not take the rental. After all, this should be easy. And she said this, I need an exact year, make, and model of rental car because I am going to the country club this Saturday and cannot let everybody know I was in an accident. I could not even process that shit. I was in such a state of shock I said nothing. The level of entitlement was so great I could not even process it. This woman was one of the ultra-rich. Even a Sentra would be perfectly serviceable for me. This woman was devastated by not having her life in perfect order. The delay was long enough that they thought I hung up the phone. She stormed off that day in a huff. A few hours later, I received a fax message from an attorney in the area she lived stating she was being represented by the attorney. 10 minutes later, I get a call from the lawyer. She's in the back of the call, interjecting every so often as the lawyer tries the usual shtick with me to get me to admit that I've acted in bad faith, not paid her money, or done something wrong. Yeah, real hard to prove when the claim is basically carte blanche. On its own right, this is somewhat unusual. This has been a property damage case up to this point. Why is some hoity-toity lawyer harassing me over rental and property damage? He's not making any money on this. There's a reason every city has their big injury attorneys with radio ads playing non-stop. Oh, turns out he's a friend of the family. Anyway, I walk the guy through the claim, and she interjects randomly to fill everything with lies. I basically tell him how things have been progressing. We've been not only following insurance law to the letter, we've been going above and beyond. This is a rich man's insurance game we're in, remember? I've literally given this woman 1,000 opportunities to have the easiest claim in her life, and she has made nothing but roadblocks for everybody. I advise him we're more than willing to pay for a Ferrari, but she's refused more than 15 offers. Suddenly, it finally clicks that I'm actually not the bad guy, and that the lawyer and his client are backed into a corner. I hear them bicker for a few seconds as he puts the receiver down. She'll go pick it up tonight. Thus, repairs were started and all went well. Well, almost. I did find out the other reason an attorney was filed out. I was eating lunch in the break room one day with one of our medical adjusters and she was bitching about some crazy lady she called Ferrari lady. She had been a pain in the ass, as the attorney had been, and the adjuster had just been somehow made to pay several $1,000s in therapy and other medical bills, mostly due to stress and anguish. I worked at a coffee shop where a woman came up to me to complain that her lattes weren't filled to the top. Elle had seen her husband sneak sips on the walkover, but I wasn't gonna say that. So I gladly offered to remake both drinks, but she said, I don't want you to fix this, I just want you to know I'm disappointed in you. Yelled at me from her car cause me and my sister were wrestling in the front yard. I had her pinned, and she was laughing her ass off cause that's how we bond. Then this bitch pulls up in her dumbass minivan, and starts yelling at me to get off of her. Bitch, no. We are sisters. We can wrestle all we want, you fucking divorced Momo look-in, minion-loving anti-vaxxer bitch. I was sitting next to a lady on a plane, and she instigated some small talk before takeoff. When I told her I studied earth science, she proceeded to ask me if there was any real proof that plate tectonics existed, and asked what my Lutheran church thought about that. I'm not religious and there had been literally zero talk of religion at all in the conversation before that, haha. I was a supervisor at Cost Plus World Market. A Karen comes in one night pushing a cart full of obviously used throw pillows and asks to return them. Of course she has no receipt, and instead wants us to just look her up in the system. Except she refuses to provide her information for us to try to look her up. She starts yelling at my cashier, and that's when I stepped in to tell her very politely and calmly that she either needs a receipt or needs to provide us her name and phone number. She starts screeching and screaming about how we're assholes and she'll get us fired and blah blah blah. Then she demands an apology from the president of the world. I'm certain she meant the president of World Market, but in her bleached hair fury she said the president of the world, and I barely held it together as I calmly offered her the corporate feedback number. She wouldn't take it and instead walked out of the store still yelling and without her cart of dirty pillows. She returned about 20 minutes later, quietly apologized, and took her pillows with her. We never heard from her again. It's been long enough that I think anyone involved has long since forgotten. Now, I should say that this didn't happen to me personally, but it occurred in real time while I was, indirectly, present. I was working for a phone company in a call center. We were in training for a new scope of service, and part of that training involved listening to some of those calls that may be recorded for training purposes. Normally, the recordings are selected semi-randomly, but this one was specifically selected because it had happened to a supervisor in our center 10 minutes prior. Karen called us in a fury. It seems that she had discovered that her son had replaced her number on his 5 favorite numbers list with the contact information of an unknown female. She wanted us to change it back. We legally could not do that. It's not her phone, after all, and he made the change intentionally. When the agent on the call tells her this, Karen flips her shit in the way only a true Karen can. It's the full package, screaming, shouting, accusing us of being crooked, unfair, the customer is always right, etc., etc. At this point, I should mention that Karen was calling from the store in her local mall. After about 5 minutes of Karen rage, we hear the following exchange: "Serious authority voice, ma'am, if you can't calm down, you're gonna have to leave the store." Mostly incoherent K raging, "Sounds like I will not calm down. They are cheating me," and so forth. "Sav okay, ma'am? You're under arrest." Shocked, disbelieving pause in Karen raging, "What? Sav, you are under arrest, ma'am, for something muffled and unintelligible." This final declaration is followed by the sound of a mobile phone clattering to the floor/countertop, from where the salesperson retrieves it. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't think you have to worry about this anymore, she just got arrested." During the 2009 recession period, I worked at Best Buy while I was between real jobs. At the time, the website and the retail stores were run by separate business entities. So it was often that store and web prices differed. But the store policy was to always match. One night a couple comes in. Karen asks for a 500 MB Seagate hard drive. I asked, "Did you mean gigabyte?" Karen, "I know what I want, just show me where it's at." Me, "No problem, hard drives are over here." Karen, "What the hell? This drive was $50 cheaper online. Are you trying to rip me off?" Me, "Just a minute, let me look it up. I find a Western Digital that is on sale." Me, "Looks like it is this drive that is on sale for $109, I don't remember the numbers now." Karen, "Can't you read? The tag says $159. Me, "Yes, I can give you this drive for the $109, it matches the one online." Karen, "Fine, call your manager or whatever you have to do." We didn't need a manager for matches. While doing the register stuff, Karen says to her husband, "This is probably going to take a while. They never know what they are doing." So we get to payment and Karen gives me a Visa. Now, out of habit, I ask for an ID. Karen, "Are you kidding me? You are not authorized to require an ID for a purchase. That is Visa's policy. I am going to have this store shut down for such a ridiculous requirement, blah blah blah." While she prattled on, I finalized the transaction, put the drive in a bag, and handed it to her without looking at her. I did look at the husband, who had been silent the entire time. He slowly glanced down at the ground and followed her out. On the way out, she, of course, asked to talk to a manager. So 2 things about the situation. 1. She is correct. Visa, at least at the time, did not require ID checks. However, merchants were permitted to ask. I did give a thought to making a scene out of it, because 2. It was my last night. The managers on duty got a good laugh out of her. Tried to return a top to the store I worked at 6 months after it was purchased. When I said there is a time limit on change of mind returns, she knows, she shops there a lot, she tried to tell me that was against the law. When I correctly pointed out that the law referenced faulty items, she tried to tell me her fat ass not being able to fit into it was a fault of the garment. When I told her she could try her luck with corporate, she stormed out only to storm back in later to ask for my name to add to her complaint to the ombudsman. I gave it with a smile, cause I was fucking right, and moved on with my day. So glad I finally get to post something. Buckle up, it's story time. For my grade 2 end of the year school party, we went over to a community pool. It was designed for kids, with a lazy river, slide, etc. There were a few kids that had gotten hold of inner tubes, like the style you find at water parks all the time. I wanted one too and found one sitting on the edge of the pool. I grabbed it and started to play with it, as kids do. Some lady comes over and tells me that she had rented it, and that I couldn't play with it. Ogre lady takes the tube and leaves it on the edge of the pool, not even using it, smirks back at me with this crappy face like she beat me in some major contest of wills. Me being raised to respect people that were, at least technically, adults, I say fine, whatever, Weird flex to prove your adulthood by bullying a 7-year-old, but moved on with my play. Some swim instructor that had another tube noticed and let me play with one that her class was done using. I say thank you, Happy Me has a tube now. Another kid in my class immediately bobs over and asks if he can use my newfound tube. I tell him no, I just got it. He shrugs and goes over and takes over lady's tube, which she is not using and has left on the edge of the pool. I keep playing for probably another 2 minutes when ogre lady comes splashing back. The conversation goes like this: "OL, I told you to stop playing with that tube. Give it back." Me: "This isn't your tube, that swim instructor gave it to me and another kid in my class took yours down the lazy ole," interrupting and now shouting, "I don't believe you. Give it here." Proceeds to yank the tube off my head. Me: "Hey." OL puts tube back on the edge of the pool right where the last one was and comes over to me: "You're a little thief and your mother ought to be ashamed of raising a liar. If I see you going near that tube again, I'll have you kicked out of the pool." He goes back to gossiping with the other stereotypical suburban moms. I obviously am terrified and feel awful cause I got yelled at and insulted by a stranger. I don't remember the rest of the day, other than it was pretty miserable after that. The injustice of the whole thing, especially that the other kid who took the tube got off with the whole thing. He often wasn't very nice to me, still makes me grit my teeth. I am now a full-grown adult. In tech support, this Karen had started a PowerPoint presentation, saved it, gave it a name, worked on it for 8 hours, closed it, and when the program said, "Do you want to save changes?" said no. So the program did what it was told and dumped them, and surprisingly when she reopened it, it was blank. I explained that she told it not to dash interrupted. "No, that is not acceptable. You will fix it." "No, there is no," interrupted. Go around this circle several times. I finally call the on-call support for her company and explain what was going on. Have you ever had someone roll their eyes so hard you could hear them over a phone? Then conferenced Karen, who started right in before either of us could say anything with how incompetent I was, etc., etc. He let her burble for a minute, then cut her off. She started squawking and he cut her off again, and again, and again until she finally shut up out of sheer surprise, I think. Screeching like a harpy didn't work? What world is this? He explained to her the same thing that I had, and she started yelling again and he chopped her off. "No. You've wasted my time on my day off, working as a favor to people with actual problems, and you've wasted tech support's time. You were abusive to both of us and I'm going to report you to HR in the morning. Goodbye." Click, he hangs up, and I'm laughing my ass off as she spits and sputters like an engine that just got a good solid swig of water. Note: in this particular version of PowerPoint from decades ago, early 1990s, while it did have autosave, the autosaves were both unreliable and automatically deleted when you close the program. Microsoft wouldn't support anything over 25 slides, and hers was over 250. I worked at McDonald's during the time they switched to Child's Fries and discontinued the caramel dip in Happy Meals. Everyone was pretty cool with it, but one country club looking Karen came in with her daughter and ordered a nugget Happy Meal with 3 cups of caramel dip, because Braylon likes to dip her nuggets in it. I apologized and let her know we discontinued to caramel dip, which resulted in an instant meltdown. Kid threw herself down on the floor in an absolute screaming tantrum, and Karen was screaming at me that we do have caramel dip and I'm obviously keeping it from her. Then the accusations of me, a 17-year-old, purposely trying to starve her daughter. Honestly, kid could have benefited from starving a bit. I've ruined her day. She's a regular customer but she's never coming back. Where's my manager? Typical Karen stuff. Manager eventually came out and just grabbed a sundae cup and filled it with a couple pumps of caramel, and Karen gave me a smug look and flipped me off. I was standing on a crowded train and a pregnant Karen started screaming at me because she had nowhere to sit. Me, the person who was standing because there were no seats. She started screaming like it was my fault that there were no seats. When I was at work, this older couple wanted me to carry a box all the way to the front for them just because they didn't want to put it in their cart because it wouldn't fit. When I was trying to tell them that all they had to do was slide it underneath, they all of a sudden didn't want it. So, trying to be nice, I told them that I would take it to the front for them, went up near the front later on and they didn't even pick up their item. She was a friend of the family. Invited me to live in her guest room of her house for free when she found out I was living in a motel after a breakup. I was getting a great deal on monthly rates at this motel and they were letting me store all of my stuff for free on top of that, but free is free. She was very strict on when I could be out in the common areas, when I could use the kitchen or shower, and wouldn't let me park my car in the driveway because she wanted to leave the space in case the girl renting the basement suite bought a car. I wasn't allowed to have friends over at any time. Shortly after I moved in, she also started telling my dad when and what kind of mail I was getting, for some reason. After being there for 3 weeks, she told me I needed to start paying rent because it wasn't fair to the other girl living there. The other girl was an actual renter paying for an actual basement suite with an actual tenancy agreement. I paid her for 1 month, long enough to find something else. I lost the great deal on the off-season motel, and ended up getting a shitty basement suite elsewhere, but freedom was way better than living there. When I moved out, and I had given her notice I would be, despite not being an actual renter, she told everyone who would listen that I was ungrateful and awful. Thankfully she was already on thin ice with my family, but geez. My manager Karen sat me down for an hour after my shift had ended preaching to me why it was my fault I was physically assaulted by a customer. Worked at Home Depot one summer during school. Lady comes in with a friend and asks me for a barbecue part. I walk them to the aisle, pull a universal part off the shelf and tell them it'll work. They look at me like I'm a moron and say, well, we want this specific brand of part. I tell them sorry, we don't stock that brand at all. This is the part I have, it's a universal and will work. They launch into a tirade about how Walmart, a whole 4 blocks away, carries it and therefore she should be able to buy it here. This went back and forth for several minutes before they stormed off yelling about how unhelpful I was. Assistant manager was in earshot the whole time and just walks over to me and says, what a bitch. I used to own a photography store, sold cameras and did pictures for passports etc. We opened at 9 p.m. on Mondays, but I happened to be at the store on Monday morning because I needed to get something, was planning on just grabbing what I needed and go home when Karen tried to get in through the locked door. Door had a sign on it that said we were closed, and a sign with our opening hours. I didn't turn on any of the lights so it was also very dark inside. Karen started banging on the door. I was just about to leave so I went outside to tell her we were closed. Karen didn't take it well and immediately demanded to speak to the manager. I said that I'm the owner. She then proceeded to shout and curse, so much so that the manager of the supermarket across the street came out to help me. She then tried to make the supermarket manager force me to open my store almost 4 hours earlier. Didn't work. Never seen the woman again. My sil Karen asked me not to put pictures of her children on Facebook. She said she was a very private person, and just didn't want them on there. That's fine. If she had left it at that, I would have been okay with it. But then, she goes on to say, you know, because I put people in jail. She's not in law enforcement in any way, shape or form. She's a human resources manager. I can't wait to see the action-packed movie this story will be based on. Karen's children are abducted as payback for her condescending, no help whatsoever, human resources style, and she has to get them back. I wonder if Liam Neeson will play her? One time, Karen put her own hair in her half-eaten plate of food and then threw a royal shit fit, demanding that her meal be comped and that she speak to the manager. I went into the back of the restaurant, pulled out the orange hair with 3 inches of regrowth and asked the Mexican guys in the kitchen, hey, did any of you bring a wig to work today? They told me to fuck off. Went back out, told Karen that nobody on staff has red hair with blonde roots, while staring directly at her disastrous dye job, but the manager said we would be happy to buy desert for the whole table to make up for this strange phenomenon. The 4 other people at the table were clearly mortified and declined desert. She ordered cheesecake and they all sat there and glared at her while she devoured it. Fucking Karen.